Motionless in White's Infamous. What the hell? Oh, yeah. I actually don't own the physical edition of this album. I only own the digital deluxe edition. So, that won't stop me from making a review though. So, on with it. So, Infamous has 12 tracks on the original version. But the deluxe edition comes with about 6 bonus tracks. I'd say 5, but one of them's a radio mix of America. They don't even censor the F, which is very weird for a radio mix. I would assume it would have done that. But moving on, the first track is Black Damask, The Fog. This track actually sets up the entire album very well. It's a well composed and crafted opening track. Now, Motionless in White did set a pretty high hurdle and a bar with their debut track or album Creatures, but I believe Black Damask alone probably beats a lot of the songs on Creatures. Now, it didn't say all of it, but it wouldn't surprise me if I saw Black Damask on Creatures instead of Infamous, because Black Damask does sound a lot like what they had, what Motionless in White had special in Creatures. Now, next track, Devil's Night, is it's a bit more up tempo with a synthesizer dance riff, I guess could call it a riff, at the start as an intro. Now, this gives the fist pumping and blood rushing, adrenaline pump up song. I listen to it all the time when I'm in the gym and whatnot, but this song is also another good track on the album, and it's one of its best, just like Black Damask. It also features a breakdown, and it's also in the deluxe edition, or obviously breakdown, I don't know why I said that. In the deluxe edition, some of the vocal styles or the vocal processing effects are different than the original Infamous, and I really liked the deluxe edition one better, because with the vocal processing, it gave it that much more ambiance and horror aspect. Since Motionless in White is mostly about this horror ambiance with their lyrics and also their keyboards, the effects they make with those keyboards and synths, and also with Chris Motionless processed vocals. Now, moving on, America is their third track, and this one's more of a political track. It does fire shots at, well, White House government, but it's in more of like a tongue-in-cheek way. It's one of those tracks, but overall solid track. It has a guitar solo in it, very simple, but it's pretty cool. It's a good track. I believe it's one of their singles, and I really understand why it was picked to be a single, so good on them. The fourth track, Burned at Both Ends. This is actually my favorite track out of the entire album, because it's up-tempo, it's catchy, it has it showcases Devin Solah's bass for quite a little bit, but I really appreciate that the bass can actually kind of get some recognition, bassist myself. But Burned at Both Ends is a fantastic track. It does have this one part where Chris starts to kind of like talk in the middle of, I'm just referred to as talking in the middle of the track or in the song. It has an element of As I Lay Dying, and clearly they were inspired by As I Lay Dying. That's one of their inspirations in this genre, and I can definitely see an As I Lay Dying influence during that part on this track. So it's a fantastic track, and I highly recommend it. The next track is Divine Infection. Now, this is kind of where things starts to get downhill on the album, as because these next few tracks kind of rely on profanity and also mainly rip-offs of Marilyn Manson, at least a few of them. The Divine Infection is your whole I hate your stereotypical I hate religion song and I don't care what you say. It's one of those, and Chris's vocals are processed to the point where it sounds like Marilyn Manson. Well, Marilyn Manson being one of their influences, but I would have liked to see a difference between Chris and Marilyn Manson. That would have been cool. Other than that, it's a decent track. If you like it, yeah, it's solid, it's decent, but to me, it's very similar to what Manson has done before. Puppets 2, The Rain, featuring Bjorn Speedstrid. Bjorn Speedstrid is actually one of my favorite vocalists. I haven't checked out his band yet, so I'll have to do that later, but he was on Demon Hunter's Collapsing song, and I loved his vocals on that. And I love his vocals on this track too. But what Puppets 2 suffers from is the lyricism. The lyricism in this song is just, God, I don't know what to say it. How to say it, actually. It's, simply put, it highly relies on profanity, and there's nothing in it that really made Puppets 1 so good. Puppets 1 had highly poetic lyrics in it that showed Chris's emotions and hurt after this relationship and after being abused and used. But Puppets 2 almost sounds like he's just insulting this person he was in a relationship with. Now, I do appreciate the last few lines of the song, as it does kind of return to its Puppets 1 style with a highly poetic lyrics, but most of the verse and the breakdown is very, very attacking and almost sounds like he really wants to kill her. Now, that's just from my standpoint. You can take it completely different. You can have a completely different view on it, and that's completely fine. But that's how I see it, as it heavily relies on profanity, and it just sounds like he's so fed up with it. And I understand, but you could have done better with lyrics, honestly. The next track is Cinematic, spelled with an S. There's a pun there. Aha, caught that. And I like the ambiance of this track. This track actually has one of the best atmospheres on this album. But what makes it suffer is, or what this track suffers from, again, is the verses lyrics, as Chris clearly says, "Now just fuck me to death." I'm not sure about that. If you don't want to be in a hurtful relationship and you want to leave, but you want to stay with her at the same time, you want her to you to death, like you want to die. I don't know. Honestly, this track could have been a lot better too, in my opinion, but I really enjoyed the ambiance, and I do listen to it from time to time when things are kind of getting down and you need some dark atmosphere to fit the mood. The next track, If It's Dead, We'll Kill It, is a solid track. I really like this track, but my problem with it is that the keyboards and the synths are nearly identical to Scissorhands, The Last Snow, from their Creatures album. And I mean, I've showed this to a couple of people, like, as a comparison between the two, and they did say, it's not just me, they did, these two people, or multiple people, did notice the huge similarities between If It's Dead, We'll Kill It and Scissorhands' keyboards and synths parts. It's probably in the same tuning, but the chord progression on the keyboard is extremely similar. The first time I listened to it, I thought, wait a minute, this is from Scissorhands. This is from Scissorhands, what the hell? But it grew on me. I kind of saw it as kind of like a Scissorhands Part 2, unofficial Part 2, but overall it's a decent track. I enjoyed listening to this one, unlike a couple of the others that I mentioned before this. Synthetic Love is another track. I can only compare it to Cinematic just because it's kind of like Chris still talking about this fake love he had. That's how, I mean, this is all under my interpretation. All the songs are how I interpret it. Synthetic Love is that's all I can compare it to. Cinematic, because it just and Puppets, because it just talks about this fake love that Chris had in this abusive relationship. It's all I can say. It. Some people dig it, but I just can't get into it. 10th track. Now, this is probably one of my least favorite tracks on the album. Title has to do with it. Hate, but lyricism in this song is pretty awful. Now, just slight disclaimer, I don't mind profanity in my music. I think it can be used I think it can be necessary to use some profanity, but if it's overused like you're a 12-year-old on Xbox Live playing Call of Duty just learning to use F and N, Chris doesn't say N, by the way, but I'm using it as an example. It just sounds like that. He just sounds like a really edgy teenager toward 12 to 14-year-old who just learned the F word and thinks he's depressed, or just hates the world. That's all I could see it as, and this track was really a turn-off on the album for me. That's just my opinion. I could not dig this track at all. The next track, however, Underdog, is probably the underdog, pun intended, mind you, of this entire album. It is also one of the highlights and one of the best tracks on this album, as it features a mellow. What I like so much about this song is that it features a good breakdown. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, breakdowns are generic, there's nothing good about it, but I really enjoyed the breakdown on this song. The solo is technical. I like that. Now, while the solo is very similar to America, exactly the same, actually. Underdog is more technical. Therefore, I like Underdog more than America. I don't know which came first in the writing process, so I can't say, oh, Underdog ripped off of America, or America ripped off of Underdog, or they just reused it, recycled it. I can't say for sure, but I like Underdog's solo a lot better than America's solo. And also the keyboards or the piano during this song, it shows that emotion. And also the chorus, Chris's voice is well done in this chorus. It might be processed. It's hard to tell. I mean, at this point, the recordings, we all process our vocals. At some point, there is auto-tune used. Even in metal, it's been done, trust me. But the chorus shines this track. It takes this track and it scrubs it and it lets it shine to you. I think that's what I like most about this track. It's just well done in every single way, and it's a huge improvement from like the past two tracks prior to this one. The next track, Infamous, it's also one of my least favorite tracks off the album. At this point, I couldn't care much for this track. It's the title track, but just like Hate and Puppets 2, it suffers greatly from the overuse of profanity. Again, 12-year-old who just learned the F word on Xbox Live. That's all I can say about Infamous. Now, because of the deluxe edition, I'll also be talking about the few bonus tracks. You guys want to know, right? The first bonus track is called Sick from the Melt, and I think this track is very decent. It's well done. It's one of my favorites. I listen to it quite often. The next track, Fatal, also bonus tracks at this point, is also a well done track. It's well composed. It's the lyrics are good in my opinion, and I think it kind of raises this album back up from the damage of Synthetic Love, Infamous, and Hate. Yeah, those few tracks just kind of killed it for me, and then Fatal and Sick from the Melt just kind of pushed it back up a little bit. Not a lot, but not a whole little. Just enough to give it, for me to buy it at least. I had to listen to the tracks before I purchase things. It's kind of what I do. Then there's America, the Cell Dweller remix. Now, these next 3 tracks, including this one, are remixes done by other artists or the band members. So this one's by Cell Dweller. I do not know who that is. He's probably a producer, music producer. And it's good. The remix is very good. Now, the remixes are going to sound more electronic than metalcore, but it's well done. It's a well done remix. I enjoyed listening to it. Underdog by Ricky Horror remix. Ricky Horror is one of the guitarists for Motionless in White. And I don't know. I like the original a lot better, but this is also a pretty good track too. So I approve of this remix. Cinematic by Combi Christ. Now, I actually like Combi Christ because they actually made one of my favorite video game soundtracks from the remake of, or reboot of, Devil May Cry. They did the music for that, and I really enjoyed their stuff, and I started listening to them. And what can I say? I think Cinematic, the Combi Christ remix, is slightly better than the original Cinematic. I mean, it kind of loses that ambiance as it's heavily electronic, but it also keeps the main elements of the song. So I greatly appreciate it. And then you have America Radio Mix. I said this at the beginning of the video. I really don't know why they had to go ahead and do this. They don't even censor any of the words from what I've listened to so far. But yeah, there you have it. That's Infamous Deluxe Edition. Overall, it's a decent album. It has its ups and downs, like heavy ups and downs, but there are a lot of tracks on here that are really, really good, in my opinion. And overall, I rate this album a solid 7 out of 10. It's listenable, and it's decent, but again, as I said, it has its ups and downs, and it's not for all audiences. Some people will dig it, some people won't. That's just it. I'll see you in the next video.